Hi everyone. I've now had my NC750 for 6 weeks or so now. I've completed about 700 miles on it, and it's just come out of its first service. So I thought now would be a good time to sort of do a review, an in-depth review. This video is probably going to be a bit long because I've got lots to say about specific bits of the bike. But for those that are not interested in watching all of it, I'll try to include various title screens which will allow you to sort of skip through the video in fast time and find the bit that interests you. I'll also post up on the screen the rough sort of position times within the video, and hopefully that will help for those that don't want to sit through a very long review but are interested in specific aspects of the bike. Well, the 700 miles that I've done on the bike have been reasonably varied. It's involved a lot of local trips, travelling within town, some filtering, motorway journeys as well, and also lots of backcountry lanes that we did on the ABR routes. So I've done two big trips on it so far. One around the Cotswold was only about sort of 120, 130 mile. But the last one, the two Moors sort of trip, involved from leaving my home to getting home was over 400 miles. So that gave me a very good grounding of how the bike's performing. As I say, it's still early days, but this is a good point following the first service to do a review. So let me talk about the services first. So the bike needs 300 miles to run in. And then needs its first service at just sort of 600 odd miles. I had purchased the service plan, and I went for the annual version. There's two versions. One includes the first service, 600 mile service, and two annual checks, which are not much actually. There are a number of checks. I think this chain gets lubed, and they do an oil change. That was $399, and that's the one I elected for. The second service plan involves, it's done by the mileage of travel, so that'll be the first 600 mile one at 800 mile, 8,000 mile, and one at 16,000 miles, and that's $570. So there was a few questions raised about whether that was going to be good value. So while I was down there having the first service done, I asked Fowlers, who did my service for me, what the cost of those would be if I paid as I go. So my first service was, I've got the invoice, was £166. Obviously that was contained within my service plan, and what he said, the annual checks would roughly be the wrong side of £200. So even if you use £200, that would ultimately come up at 566. And the service plan cost me $399. So there is definitely about £150, £160, £170 saving there by doing the service plan. I'd never, unfortunately, managed to get a price for the big service that takes place at the 1600 mile, 16,000 miles, service, and because that involves some valve checks. I'm going to do them myself, so I didn't do that, but I expect that that's going to be a lot more expensive. But anyway, there's a little bit of information about the service plan. Incidentally, even though the service was relatively straightforward at the 600 mile stage, let's say a number of checks and just an oil and filter change, they kept the bike for 2.5 hours, which was a bit of a pain. God knows why they needed that amount of time. But anyway, so the first service has been done. So let's have a look at the bike then and see what I think of it so far. So first of all, let's look at the front suspension. I would probably suggest and agree with many of the other people who have reviewed the bike that the front suspension is hard. I think it is a budget setup, and could probably benefit from a front spring upgrade. And I think that if people are really oversensitive about it, that would be the best option. On the trips I've done, and as I've used the bike more and more, I've got used to it, and I'm not finding it a particular issue that I initially did when I picked up the bike. I felt when I first picked it up, I thought it was really quite hard. and it was jolting through my body. As I've used the bike more, or whether it's just loosened up a little, but I wouldn't have thought so within 700 miles, I've either got used to it or I'm not finding it the problem that it is. On the recent trip to the two moors, there were some quite deep potholes, and when you hit them, that was when it was really noticeable. Also, when you were pushing quite hard, particularly sort of in the twisties, I found that yet again I felt it weren't necessarily as plush as it should be, but I've got used to it. At this point in time, I'm not going to invest the additional money of upgrading the front suspension, and I have no plans at present to change it. We'll see what happens at the next big review and see whether I change my mind. Right, so while we're talking about suspension, let's talk about the front fork legs. If you'll see on my channel that there's a video there on how to fit some fork protectors. The bike never came with them as standard, and which was a bit of a shame. That Honda didn't fit them as standard, and I think that's a message that goes through most of the bike. Honda have cut corners. Perhaps I'll rephrase that. They haven't cut corners, they've just not fitted things that I think should have come as standard, and that's probably to keep the price down, and make it sort of competitive with other manufacturers. But their fitting fork protectors is a really cheap, easy fit. There is a video on the channel if you want to look how we do that, and I thoroughly recommend it. You'll be able to see in the picture there that it has protected the bottom part of the sort of the chrome tube, and also it's done a great job at stopping grit and dirt getting into the dust seals that sit around the forks. And obviously, if dust gets in there, it could damage the seals and cause an early life failure, and then you've got fluid leaking down your legs. So I think it's well worth doing. Thoroughly recommend it. I think they've performed well. And the other thing that was really interesting is if you then fit them and decide that you're going to either sell the bike or whatever, they're really easy to return to stock. You can just clip the little sort of strap that fits around them, and remove them really easily. So that's good, and that will also be good if you have to do any maintenance and change the fork seals in the future. You'll be able to remove them and get better access. So big thumbs up for the fork protectors, and like I say, if you've got one of these bikes, then I recommend that you fit them. And even if you've got a bike that hasn't got them fitted to a different bike, have a look at them and get some fitted. I think they're well worth the money. So we'll now move down a little bit and talk about the front, sort of the front mudguard, fender, whatever you wish to call it. When that come out from a standard, it's very short, and you'll see some videos on the channel which sort of show my concerns about the amount of muck and road crud that got chucked up onto the radiator. I think Honda have not done a particularly good job there in designing that front mudguard, or they've just had to reduce the material cost and have cut it very short. It's unnecessary in my view. It wouldn't have cost a lot to have done the job properly. So I fitted a front fender extender to try and prevent that. The sticky pads that come with it worked fine. But due to a few bits of feedback that I received, I decided to not use the sticky pads in the end and use plastic glue. And that has stuck on really quite well and quite firmly. And during all of the trips, it's not caused a problem at all. It's still stuck there. Like I say, the trip on the two moors went through some sort of reasonably rough roads, and was lots of crap and lots of stones flying up, and it's still on there. It's perfectly secure and it's performing okay. You will see that it stopped the vast majority of the road crud coming up onto the radiator, which was its purpose. But it's not been actually 100% effective. You can still see that some of it is getting up there onto the radiator, but a hell of a lot less than there was there previously. So that's a big tick as well. Yet again, I thoroughly recommend you go and get one fitted. I've had a few comments about whether fitting the extender to the front mudguard causes any clearances with the front wheel and the front tyre. You can see from the pictures there's plenty of clearance around there, and like I say, it hasn't moved at all in the time that it's been fitted. It's really quite secure, I feel, and there's plenty of clearance there. There's been no rubbing. There's been no stones or mud caught between the fender extender and the tyre. It's done a perfectly good job, so I would have no worries about fitting one. So we move up a little bit and get to the handlebars, and I'm a big fan of the handlebars on the NC750. They're quite wide. The steering is really quite light, and it's a very easy bike to steer, and particularly to filter through traffic. You can change direction really quite well, and it doesn't require lots of pressure on the bars. You've got lots of leverage there, and yeah, I've been really quite impressed with them. The controls initially when I picked it up, the indicators in particular were seemed to me to be the wrong way round for the way my brain is working and the bikes I've had previously, in that the indicator cancel button and the on button sort of are very close together, and for me I think I would swap them around if I had a preference, but so I was hitting the on rather than cancelling the indicators, which was annoying some road users, and I got a few hand signals. Just had to apologise for that. It wasn't deliberate, but there you go. As I've ridden the bike more, I've got used to that. That's not happening now, and those controls are becoming a lot more intuitive, and that's a good thing. The heated grips, the bike, I had fitted as an accessory some heated grips to the bike, and these are the Honda ones. They're very neat in the way that they fit onto the bike, and I like that. They're a lot less cumbersome than other makes, such as the Oxford intelligent heated grips that I've fitted to my Pan-European. But in terms of performance, there's 5 levels, and you can adjust them, and it's relatively straightforward to adjust them. But the performance themselves, they work okay. I can't complain too much, but I don't think the eats that come out of them has been as good as the set that I've got fitted to the Pan. But they do the job, so I've got no real complaints. But there's just nothing special to say about them. They're not super high performing. They don't eat up particularly quick, but they do get up in a reasonable time. And you have, let's say, 5 levels of adjustment. The top level is not super duper hot, but it does keep your hands warm. So nothing much to say there. The other thing is I got it as part of a kit of accessories when I had the bike fitted, and if you buy them independently off of Honda, they're really quite expensive. They're north of £200, £250 odd, so really expensive for heated grips. And if that was something you was just fitting as an accessory to your bike, it hasn't already got that, you might want to look at some aftermarket products. They may be what they want, but the big selling point for those Honda heated grips is how they look. They fit into the bike really nice, and there's no additional controllers bolted to your handlebars, so I do like that. The mirrors, right, okay. I've got mixed feelings about the mirrors. They come up on stalks off the handlebars, as you can see, and they're sort of an angular sort of shape, and they work okay. A real plus for them is you get no vibration while you're riding. The mirrors are not wobbling about. You can see in them. They hold the reflection of what's behind you really quite well, and you're able to focus on that. So that's a good point. I just can't seem, for me, to find exactly the right position for them. So when I'm looking in the mirrors, I'm finding that I want to just adjust them either up or down, out situation, and I just can't find the ideal position for me. They're not bad at all. You can see behind you. They give good vision, so I've got nothing to complain. It's just complain about, but it's just I can't quite find the ideal position for me. I did try to adjust the stems. The stems fit to the handlebars, and there's two locking nuts that hold them in position. I thought if I adjusted the stems a little bit, and then I was able to then adjust them, find that ideal position for me personally. But the when I tried to do that, the locking nuts that position the stem to the handlebars were really super tight, and so I've left that alone for now. I will revisit that, but I want to make sure that I've got really nice tight fitting spanners, and I'm in a position where I'm at home, so that if anything does go wrong and they do snap or something, I'm not expecting them to do that, by the way. I'm at home and I'll be able to rectify the problem rather than do it out on the road. So watch this space for that. But at the moment, they're good. Nothing to complain about really. It's just me being a bit panicky about how I want them set up. So that's probably most of it. The levers. Right, so on the NC750X, the front brake lever is adjustable. You have the normal settings there, but the clutch is not. The clutch is fixed. So that's a bit of a shame. It would have been nice to have had an adjustable clutch lever. For me personally, I've not found a need to want to adjust the clutch lever. They feel okay, they're positioned all right, so it's not causing me a bit of a problem. And the clutch feel, it's extremely light. For those that are aware, they come with my version comes with a slipper clutch, and the clutch feel is very light, particularly from what I've been used to riding the Honda Pan European, and that's a real bonus. And during that 400-mile trip we did it over a 48-hour period. I never got tired. I never had any cramps in my hand. It was never an issue, and in fact, it just went. It was unnoticeable, and I think that's probably the best compliment I could give it. There was just no problems at all with the clutch. It's really light and made the bike really easy to control. The bike position is very predictable for the clutch, and because of the slipper gear, if you do change down, get a couple of gears, perhaps a little bit more urgently than would be ideal, there was never any problems at all. No locking up, nothing. So clutch was unremarkable, and that is probably the best sort of compliment I can give it. So a big thumbs up there for the clutch pressure. The brake lever, so the front brake lever. So when you apply the brakes reasonably hard, and I was able to just sort of I could feel the pads biting into the disc, and there was a very sort of low, sort of audible noise as they did that. The brakes were really sort of quite strong. I know they're only a single disc set of brakes. They ain't got twin discs, but for the bike they were strong enough, powerful enough. Even in some of the sort of slippy conditions that I had on my last trip, I never felt the ABS come on the front once. Never had any problems at all. So I've got really nothing but good things to say about the brakes, and they have good feel. So I think that feel has got a little bit better the more I've used them. And so as I've used the bike more, and that front brake feel has got a little bit better. So they just probably needed to bed in a little bit, and got nothing to complain about. So for those that are thinking about the bike and thinking, oh, it's only got a single front brake disc, I wouldn't worry personally. Like obviously I'm not riding it at MotoGP speeds, so they may find their limitation if you're really pushing on, but for me, I haven't found that yet. So we'll wait and see. In terms of disc wear and brake pad wear, it's just too early yet. There is nothing noticeable at all in 700 miles. I think, like I say, all that's happened in that 700 miles I've used it is the pads have bedded in a bit better, and that might be why I'm getting a bit better feel and slightly better performance. The rear brake, right? So like the front, nothing to worry about. The rear brake works. You know, unlike some older bikes that I've had, the rear brake is effective. It works okay. When I was on the last trip, I deliberately tried the ABS, and there was some sort of slippy, muddy conditions, and I did brake quite hard to see if the ABS was working on the rear, and it does. You can feel the pulsing come through the brake, rear brake sort of lever pedal, and they work okay, and it works quite effective. The traction control, never even, like I say, we was in some very slippy conditions. If it worked, I never noticed it. All thumbs up there. Nothing to really be concerned about. The gear change. So if we go over to the other side to the gear change, as I've said, the clutch was really good. And I experienced positive gear changes all the way through. I had no false neutrals. On the dash, you have a gear indicator which will tell you what gear you're in, and that's all quite intuitive. When I was doing some filtering through Bristol on the trip, that helped. I've had gear indicators before. They're quite a good thing, I feel. And I was in second and realised I was in second as the lights changed, so was able to change down. It isn't a problem. So all good there. One just minor observation is on the gear indicator. It will obviously signify what gear you're in, 1 to 6. But when you go to neutral, it doesn't show that on the dash. It shows that as a light on the dash. No problem for me, but it was just interesting. I never see a big N when you go from sort of from second to first or first to neutral. You don't get that N appear in that display on the dash. It shows up as a green light to the left of it. So, but no big deal. You know, you have a clear indication when you're in neutral. So the lights, they work. They're LED lights on. Pardon me, the LED lights on the NC750X, and I had the additional spotlights fitted. So one observation that I had there is when you flash your main beam, it is only the main light on the bike that flashes. The spots don't flash. To turn the spotlights on, there's a button, and you'll see it on some of my earlier videos, sitting under the front dash, and you press that on to activate the lights, the spotlights, and a little light comes up on to indicate that you've done that. But yeah, I was thinking that when I did a warning flash, that the fog lights might come on, but they don't. So I think they're more. They are spotlights, obviously, but I think they're more used for fog than anything else. I've only ridden them in low light so far. I've not done a night ride yet, so unable to really give you any detailed sort of feedback in terms of their performance. But I think they look good, and they do sort of set the bike off for me. So that's one sort of positive thing in terms of cosmetics, but I'll provide a bit more feedback once I've done a bit of night riding, and we'll see how they perform. But I suspect they're going to be good going down country lanes in the dark, but we'll wait and see. The rear light, I've got nothing to say about the rear light. I couldn't see it when I was riding. So I've got to make the assumption that everything's good there, and if you go around the bike it works, so not a lot to really say there. Where are we now then? Right, refueling. I've done a little video already about sort of my concerns that the fuel tank under the rear seat on the NC750, and what would happen if the key was not to work, or there was a fault with the lock or a fault with the cable. Is a bit of a, I think it could be a design flaw in that the key that unlocks the rear seat to allow you to access the fuel tank is connected through a cable that runs through the bike. So from where the frunk is, where your traditional petrol tank would be, through that through the seats and under the bike into the back of the seat. And there is no way of easily that I can see of accessing that cable and gaining access to the lock should you should that snap or foul or the lock can take. So I won't go into details, but there's a little video there about how I've tried to manage a workaround, a safeguard, should the key not work. But under that seat compartment, there's not a lot of room. I wouldn't suggest that you could probably store anything under that. It's purely to access the fuel tank. Also, the fuel tank cap is not lockable. It doesn't need to be, because you've got your security by having the seat down and it's completely inaccessible, which was my worry. So you need the key and you need to be able to unlock the seat, get the seat up before you can access it. So from a security perspective, it's really good. But yeah, again, that was my worry, be that it was perhaps a little bit too secure. And if there was a failure, I can see no way of being able to gain access to that lock other than to potentially have to drill through the seat, the rear seat, or actually cause damage in another way to be able to access it. So so have a look at my other video, and that'll show you what I've done to get around it. And you may have different opinions. If anybody does know of a way that you can access that safely, then please email me or get in contact and let me know, because I've been unable to work anything out. Those compartments are all sealed. You can't even get the front seat off without accessing the rear seat to get to the bolts. It's not like there's an easy route in. But hey, I won't talk much more about that. In terms of economy, the bike has been absolutely brilliant, and this was one of the reasons that I bought the bike, because of its fuel economy. And I'm averaging easily in all conditions well over sort of 70 miles to the gallon. Yeah, it really is good. And it has a 14-litre tank, and it's reserve for me, with about a gallon left. So when I refueled, when the reserve comes on, and the reserve, you've got no reserve light or range countdown, range counters down. So when you get to the reserve, there's no indicator telling you how many miles you've got. All you've got is a flashing light, and then it gives you that you've got left working down. And that come on. So I was able to see that on my trip. And when I then refueled, I got about 9.31 litres into that. And then the second time it was about the same. So with a 14-litre tank, that means there's about four and a bit more litres left, which is about a UK gallon. And that would give me then, based upon my fuel consumption, about another 70 odd mile. I don't think I would push that to that level, but it's good to know that you've got plenty of miles left to go and find some fuel should you need to. It's given me a little bit more confidence that I would able to, if I was on the reserve, I wouldn't be panicking and starting to look for a fuel station normally. I would just pick one up that was normally on my route. When we was on the 2 miles trip, we had to divert off of the moor to find some fuel, and we travelled about 25-30 mile, and it was fine. You know what I mean? I had no fears about running out. So from a fuel economy perspective, really, really good. I'm super impressed with that. To get to reserve, I did about 180 mile roughly. So if you add the 70 mile for reserve there, I think from full to empty, you could probably do about 250 mile. But as I said, I wouldn't push it that far, and I would be looking to sort of plan a refuel 180, 190, 200 mile journey, which is more than enough for an old geezer like me who needs a leg stretch. And with that, we'll get on to the seats. Right, so the rear seat. I've not had a pillion on the bike yet, I will do that at some point. But I've not had a pillion on the rear seat, so I can't really comment for our pillion on and whether it's comfortable enough for a pillion. I have sat on the rear seat and it seems okay. But I'm not a great pillion. I'm more of a rider. My wife Tracy, she's sat on it. She says it's comfortable enough. Did comment that, and she's used to a Pan European, remember, that the seat was not as wide as the Pan and was not as comfortable, but the seat to peg position seemed okay for her. But she was just a bit nervous. She likes to have a top box on, and she just thought, or without a top box on, she would felt a little bit uneasy, so she weren't happy to go out on it and give me any feedback. One of the things she did say was that the grab handles were in the right position for her. So there you go. So for what that's worth, that's a little bit of feedback, but I'll hopefully provide some more at the next big review, because hopefully by then I would have had some pillion experience. The rider seat. So my version of the bike is this year's bike. It's a 2023 version. Honda say that the floor to seat measurement is 800 millimeters. When I was on the bike, I'm 5'8", and I do have short legs, but I can get both feet on the ground really quite easily. But probably can only flat foot 1 foot. I can't flat foot both, and that led me to believe, well, I don't think that's 800 millimeters. So what I've done is I've put a spirit level on the seat, and I've measured the from the spirit level to the floor, and I believe that the seat position to the floor is actually 810 millimeters. Now that may be a good thing if you're a taller rider. But if you're a shorter rider, go to the showroom and try one. I also believe that the earlier models are slightly taller, and I think the seat measurements there, I think are 820, might even be a bit taller than that. So if you are a tall person or have particularly long legs, an earlier version might suit you better. We have to wait and see. You could always, of course, put an air cushion on there, and that would rise the eye even higher. So for me, it's perfectly good. It's no problem whatsoever, and everything's good. But like I say, I did measure it, and I got 810 millimeters. So unless my tape measure was a bit short, Honda's claim that they're 800 is not correct in my view. Another thing that was really interesting, while I was there, I measured the seat to the peg position, and that was 890 millimeters. Now, for me, I do have a dodgy knee, and normally I have to stop for a leg stretch because of my knee rather than my backside. But on the trip to the two moors, I'd never had no problems with my knee. There was no aches and pains. So that seat to peg position is good for me. And it may be also to do with the positioning of it rather than sort of having your knees more bent back. They seem to sit you quite upright. And that was good, and that was something I was really super pleased with, because normally it's me having to stop and slow the group down so I can get up and stretch my knee out, because it can be quite painful on long rides. But this time we did 200 mile each day, and no complaints at all about my knee. This was the other thing, is on the Pan European, and it's probably unfair to make a comparison with this, because I have a sort of aftermarket made seat that was designed for me, and my backside doesn't ache a lot on that at all. On the recent trip, I found the seat to be reasonably hard. And I found I had to stop about 100 odd miles or so. We made a stop and just had a bit of a stretch, and then got back on the bike. One of the things which was good, I was having that little break and getting back on. it was fine again for the next sort of 100 plus miles. It was perfectly okay. It wasn't like that you sort of you were achy, you got off, you had a bit of a rest, got back on, and you started achy again. So the seat was fine. Other things which I'll just sort of make an observation of is I had no sort of movement or sliding on the seat. Some of the earlier bikes and reviews I looked at, they were indicating that the angle of the seat made you slide down towards the tank, and obviously that can be quite uncomfortable in certain places. So I had none of that at all. Now I do know that the newer version, they did redesign the seat. I think it was from 2021, and for me there was no sliding towards the seat. It was no problem. And moving around was nice and easy. The seat does narrow in a little bit at the front, which I found quite comfortable, and wasn't a problem at all. So all good for the front seat. However, it is a bit hard, and if that causes you a problem, you might want to consider an aftermarket version to just put a gel pad in there, or look at reshaping it in a different way. But I've got no plans to do that at the moment, but it is something, if it does cause me a problem and I find that me bum is going numb a lot, then that is something I might consider as an aftermarket accessory, but not for now. I'm spending far too much money on the bike as it is, so I'm going to have to put up with it for a while. Right, so the pegs. Another thing I see in some reviews, and I want to dispel a bit of a myth here, was that the pegs were quite narrow and that your feet slip off of them. Now, we had some really muddy and slippy conditions on that 2 Moors trip. There was not once that I felt that I didn't have a secure footing on the pegs, and even with muddy boots, there was no slipping on them. However, they are quite narrow. They are not wide pegs, particularly nothing like what's on the Pan-European, which are very wide pegs, but they are quite thin and they do taper out towards the end. But they've got a rubber insert in there. I never found a problem with them, and I don't intend to do anything to upgrade them or change them. However, there are some aftermarket ones. And if you were doing some off-roading with it, not that I would suggest this bike is the most perfect off-road bike, but you probably can do some light trails on it, then you might want to fit some different pegs to it, but I've got no real great plans to change them. But that said, there are some aftermarket versions out there. You can do your own searches for them, and they can have removable rubber inserts and be much more off-road styled. And there's also some adjustable ones that allow you to rotate the peg and change the position, make it a bit lower. I think SW Motec did some as well. And I think, but look at it for yourself, find your own reviews. But for me, pegs are perfectly fine, not a problem, and I'm sort of not intending to change them. Like I say, if you've got particularly large feet, then they may be more of an issue than they are for me, but no problems for me, nothing to worry about. Right, the other thing on one of the accessories that I fitted was some foot wind deflectors that basically just meant to deflect the wind around your legs a little bit. I've not ridden the bike without them, so I can't really comment whether they make a big difference or not. But whilst I was going down the motorway, I did put my hand down by the side of my leg, couldn't feel any wind, and if you move it out away from your leg, the wind does come in and you can feel the force pushing you back. So I have to make the assumption that they are doing something and they are working. Incidentally, when we did go through some quite light low drizzle, more like low cloud than drizzle, and the bottom of my legs didn't get soaked at all. They were reasonably okay. So I have to sort of say that those foot wind deflectors seem to work. But like I say, I've not ridden a bike of this type without one. So I can't really comment on any big differences. One thing I will say, though, is the way they're fitted. So when I got back from the trip, the bike was absolutely covered in muck. So I was giving it a wash, and after I wash it, I use some anti-corrosion spray. And while down there spraying the anti-corrosion stuff, I put my hand onto one of those foot deflectors to lever myself up a little bit, and it come away from where it's joined. And you'll see in the picture there, the way it's fixed with a single bolt that goes through into the bike at the lower end of like sticky pads that stick it to the plastic of the main bike, the undershield of the main bike. And I just, my fault, obviously, I put my hand on there and used it up. I thought it was more secure than it was, and that pulled it away. So it was a really, really easy fix. I just got some more double-sided pads, took the bolt out, repositioned it, bolted it all back, and it's been perfect since then. And now I know not to use it as an handrail to get up. But one of the things which that did show me, because I had them fitted on the dealer when I picked the bike up as new. So if you do want to fit them as an aftermarket accessory, they're really super easy to fit. It's literally just undoing one bolt, peel the backs off the sticky pads, put the bolt through, and then stick it and position it, and that's it. It's nothing more than that. So if you do want to fit them, don't feel like you have to pay dealer installation costs, because they are super easy to fit, and it is an own DIY job. So the Frunk, right, so a trunk, whatever you want to call it, I think it's referred to as the Frunk. This, when it was another reason I bought the bike, I thought, oh, this is going to be brilliant. It's in effect like having a top box storage capability contained within the bike. If anyone's not aware, it's that area where the traditional fuel tank would sit. And then you can open it up, and then there's basically a storage area within that. Within that storage area, is the toolkit for the bike, which is nothing much, a few spanners and Allen key. But you can also gain access to the battery within that. So that's another thing that you might want to be aware of, is if you want to fit aftermarket accessories to that battery, there is like a cover there, and you have to push some little pins in to take that out, and that's where the battery is gaining access to. So if you was to have like battery chargers, Optimas and that type of thing, you would have to find a way of being able to connect that in. Just to be aware. The other thing which I had fitted as an accessory to the Frunk was a USB socket. I thought I was going to get a traditional USB. I think the Type 2.0, the normal ones that fit into computers and the like. But the more modern standard that seems to be being used now is the micro USB, the Type B. And that's what it comes with. It's a similar connector to what fits into the Samsung phone, if you've got one of them little round but things there. Now that did cause me a little bit of a problem, in that all of my leads were traditional USB Type 2.0 for my camera, for my sat nav, and for my phone. So you can go and buy, they're very cheap on Amazon, a cable which comes with both ends being that micro USB Type B, but it's a bit of a pain. You shouldn't have to go out and buy other cables, but I suppose that's just the standard changing over time. It's got the latest version on there. Another observation about the USB is that I had it installed. It's installed into the main loom by the dealer, and obviously it is only live when the key is turned and the bike ignition is on, which is a good thing. It stops you leaving stuff in the trunk unnecessarily and running your battery down. So that's a good idea. But there's a little tiny like plastic insert that fits into that to keep like a dust cover, and that keeps falling out. It's brand new, and I just can't seem to locate it properly. It's just a bit too fiddly for me. So that's just one thing to note. The other thing that I had is to run my sat nav and my camera, potentially charge the phone. I fitted a little adapter that went into that micro USB things, and then connected the normal cables in there with a little extension block on there that allowed me to charge more than one thing on the go. I couldn't quite get my rucksack with all the stuff I wanted to take into that that Frunk. I had to sort of skim down what I was going to take for my overnighter, and the pressure of pushing that in, because it's situated, the USB is situated quite high up in the trunk area. Had that sitting on top of my bag, and then just compressed the front lid down to make it secure, and run my cables at the top. But what that then did is the pressure on that actually caused the connection of my little adapter to break. So it wasn't ideal, and the positioning of that USB within the frunk wasn't perhaps, it's not as well thought out as it could have been. Not sure where else I would have put it, but where it's seated stops you putting certain things into that frunk. And leaving that all connected up there. So just a minor comment there. The other thing I was a little bit disappointed was the actual, once you go and got my rucksack, then I weren't able to take that much. I could only really pack just a traditional small rucksack about 3/4 of the way full. That did limit the amount of stuff I could take. And in a top box, I can get more than that in a top box. So it's great, it's brilliant. I think it's a terrific capability to have on the bike, but it sort of, there are some limitations with it in terms of storage, and that then brings me on to the next bit. I've not got any luggage fitted to the bike yet, and I'm still considering what to fit. You'll see some videos with my sort of concerns, worry beads about what luggage to fit. I don't want to fit the hard luggage if I can avoid it, because of cost, and also I don't want the frameworks sitting on the bike all the time. And I'm still undecided what to do. So more to come on that later, and we'll see how that goes. Right, so we'll move a little bit further down the bike now to the rear shock. Right, so the rear shock does need some protection. 100% needs some protection. The amount of crud that gets chucked off the back wheel is caking the back shock, and with that amount of sort of moisture and mud in there, it makes it quite difficult to clean. Can't clean all the way around there because of the way that the shock is positioned in the centre of the bike, also I'm finding it sort of quite difficult to try and come up with a solution to protect that. Now I can hear you say, well, just fit an ugger, fit a shield. Yeah, I get that, but fitting an ugger and a shield is going to have all of that mud being collected up in that ugger or in that shield, and I'm not sure whether I want that yet. Also, I've had a look round, and for the ones that I've seen for the ugger, I just don't like the look of them. There's some that replace the chain guard and come over it, and I just don't like that look. And there's some other sort of cheap Chinesey type looking things, which is just like a mud flap that cable ties into the bike. I'm not really happy with that. So I did elect to go for a shock sock. R&G Racing Performance do a shock sock, which is basically a bit of neoprene that wraps around the shock, protects it from all that crud. The reviews on them have been quite good. I did order one, but unfortunately the supplier has let me down, so I've got to go and buy one somewhere else. But I do still intend to get that, and when I get it, I'll post a little video and show you how to install it, and we'll do a little bit of a review on that. However, I've also bought some low temperature mouldable plastic. And I'm going to have a go at making my own sort of shield, ugger, whatever you want to call them, to provide a little bit more protection about that. And I'm going to do it just for fun. So, you know, it's just more of a little project, something to try, see if I can do it, test myself. But I'm going to have a go, see if I can mould my own version of that. And I'll show you the results. It's probably going to be rubbish, but let's give it a go, and we'll see how that goes on. So, but you definitely need to protect that shock, I would suggest, and you can use whatever method you need, but I wouldn't leave it unprotected. So if you do pick one up and it hasn't got something already fitted to it, I suggest you look at what the options are for that. But watch this space, watch the channel, and I'll share what I come up with. And it might not be the best. There's going to be lots of different opinions out there about what's best, isn't there? And that's the beauty of it. We all can sort of provide each other with feedback and share. Right, tyres. My bike come with Metzeler tyres. The versions that are fitted to it are a 90% road, 10% off-road version from standard. So far they've been okay. Normally when I've bought bikes, the standard tyres that come fitted are really quite rubbish, and I end up changing them well before they've been worn out, because they don't give me the feel and confidence that I require, and I end up buying sort of some different tyres. But these ones, they seem okay. They're really good. I've not had any excessive road noise from them. They appear to have good grip. It's too early to say how they're going to wear, but I've done sort of 700 mile. There's no noticeable wear on them. They're just sort of scrubbed in at the moment, so I think they will give a decent life. They seem to be wearing okay, and there's no problem, so they're doing a good job. So I have no plans to change them. We'll see once I've done a few more miles on them how they wear, and see how far we can get before the next tyre change, and I'll share that as we go. So another thing I'll talk about now, and I did say this was going to be a long one, but lots to talk about, is the screen. So I had the Honda Touring screen fitted. The original screen is very low. It's you might as well not have one. You might as well have a naked bike with the original screen that come with the bike as new. So I had the Honda Touring screen fitted. It's quite narrow, and it's not necessarily as tall as I would have expected it to have been. But like I say, I'm 5'8", and when I've been riding the bike on the motorway, I start to feel the wind it comes and hits me just about the centre of my visor, just above my nose there. So I do feel a little bit of turbulence on the top of the helmet. But it's okay. It's also, there's a little bit of wind noise. I can feel a little bit of wind noise, but that might be my helmet design. But it's doing okay. It's nothing too bad. In terms of width, the turbulence is hitting me roughly on my arms and top of my shoulders, but nothing too bad. Nothing that any motorcyclist who's ridden a motorcycle would have a problem with. But if you're taller, it may not perform as well. Not super impressed with it, but it's okay. It's all right. So I have noticed that there are some aftermarket versions, and some of those aftermarket versions seem to have really good reviews. So if you're thinking about buying one or trying the Honda screen, check out some of the aftermarket versions first. They may perform better. One other thing which I've found is, and I've not done a great lot of research into this, so please don't act on anything I'm saying here, is you can buy some different brackets that the screen mounts to. They're just sort of the same type of brackets that are fitted there as standard, just sort of aluminium sort of machined brackets that provide a little bit of adjustment so that you can position the screen a little bit higher. They're not super expensive, but that might be an option. But what that would then do to moving the screen a little bit higher underneath, there's like an area where the sort of wind can come in underneath the screen as well, and that's just, I think, I'm not sure why it's there, to be honest, but it's to stop, I think, that massive wind resistance, not like pushing a right shield forward. So what that would do to the effect of the performance of the shield, I'm not sure of, but they are out there. I'll have a look at them. I'm not planning to change them at the moment, but they may provide some way of raising the screen a little bit higher, should you be taller. It's important to note that when I say adjustable, they're adjustable in a sort of in a setting way that you would have to you could just slide the screen up and down, and then they're fixed. They're not going to be like some of the more modern higher end bikes that you can adjust on the go. So just be aware of that. But they are out there, and if that's something you want to look at, go and do your own research. So pardon me, you can feel I got a bit of a cold. The indicators, there's nothing much to say about them. They flash when you put them on. This model does come with an emergency stop signal system, the ESS system, which if you brake really hard, it's meant to trigger the hazards to come on, to let sort of road users behind you know that there's a problem. On my last trip, I like I say, was some slippery conditions. I was trying to do that so that I could see them work and prove that the system worked, and just try to identify exactly how hard you could brake before they came on. And also I was interested to see is whether they self-cancelled. So once you've braked really hard and the hazards go in, whether once you then let the brake off, whether they turn themselves off or whether you had to manually turn them off. Not managed to test that, so it's something I'll do in the future. Because just the conditions on the last trip weren't really conducive to doing emergency stops, and the times that I did brake quite hard and deliberately mind to try and set the system off, I obviously didn't brake hard enough. So watch this space, and we'll see how that goes, and probably wait for the weather to be a bit better. That's probably it. Right. So a few more things. So the screen itself. It's really clear. Right, it's not the flashiest thing. There's no colours and anything else that go with it, but I can see all of the information on the screen without glasses. Riding the pan, which has got sort of normal analog type speedos and things, I need my glasses to be able to see the detail because it's quite small. But on the sort of the main sort of LCD screen, everything's clear and it all works. Just a minor thing, it's personal preference. You can set the backlight so that it comes on in low lights and things there. I've not managed to be able to set that to something that I'm really comfortable for. When we was doing the 2 miles trip, the lighting got quite poor towards the end of the day, and I must say I could still see everything, but I would just have liked the light behind the dash to have been a bit brighter for me personally. I'm going to go and play with the settings and see if I can find something that suits me, but it just sort of in daylight I thought, oh, this is brilliant and it's all clear. When the light dims a bit and you're starting to get towards dusk, you can still see everything, but it's just the backlight. I would have liked it to have been a little bit warmer and a little bit brighter. So I'll do some adjustments with that and see if I can find a good setting. But it's not an issue. It's nothing to be worried about. It's just a personal preference, and I'll experiment and see if I can find something that suits me. So, in summary, it's a really easy bike to ride, extremely easy to ride, particularly the filtering and the low speed control you've got. It's very well balanced. It's extremely economical. It's comfortable but not luxurious. I found it, like I say, you can ride it all day, particularly if you had something like an air cushion on there. I don't think that would be a problem. I was really super pleased with the foot to peg position. It's like my knee not aching makes the day an whole lot enjoyable, so that's a good thing. Like I say, great in town. Good in the twisties, but it's not sort of a sports bike handling. But it's good enough. There was plenty of power to do what I wanted to do. It's not like I say, it's not a sports bike. It's not going to be roaring performance, but there's plenty there, and it was easily able to keep up with my friend's Pan-European. When we was out on the tour, and that's quite a fast bike. When you ride them properly, they really are quite a fast bike, and we was able to keep pace. And on the motorway, at legal speeds, it was perfectly fine. And if you went, I'm not saying I did, a little bit above legal speeds, I think it would cope perfectly well. But it doesn't feel particularly comfortable going north of the UK legal motorway speeds, north of 70 miles an hour. It will sit at sort of 70 and potentially 80 plus all day long, I feel. but it's not one for sort of going massively fast on. Personal view there, but it does it, and it does feel fine. Overtakes, yep, no problem whatsoever. You can overtake it. As I said before, I've had other previous bikes that have had sort of all been liter type bikes, and they've had some sort of rapid acceleration. It's not a bike that you're going to go flying past 2 or 3 cars. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that anyway. And you have to sort of plan your overtakes, but it's got more than enough. It's not something I would be worried about. You can overtake and you can keep pace with virtually anything on the road. But like I say, it isn't got that rip-roaring instant acceleration and pick up of speed, but more than enough, not a problem. So yeah, it stops, it goes, easy, can keep up with traffic, can overtake fine. So a really good bike, I think. So for me personally, I think I bought the right bike. I've been impressed with it. I would have hoped that Honda hadn't penny pinched in places and give me a bit more. So a good review, and hopefully you got some interest out of that. And I'll do the next big review when it goes in for its 8,000 mile service, which I probably suspect will be towards the end of this calendar year, maybe a little bit later, maybe into next year. Anyway, speak to you all later. Bye then.